Hello everyone, and welcome to my Young and the Restless official 24 channel. Impossible doesn't even begin to cover the moment that shatters Genoa City to its core, because when Noah Newman finally breaks down behind closed doors at the Abbott mansion and confesses that ALLIE'S was murdered, the air itself seems to stop moving, the walls closing in as Jack Abbott and Kyle Abbott realize that the nightmare they feared but refused to name is real, devastatingly real, and far worse than anyone imagined. As Noah's voice trembles and cracks, his composure collapsing. Under the weight of a truth he's carried like a loaded gun pressed to his own heart, his hands shaking as he admits that Allie is dead, not missing, not hiding, not starting a new life somewhere far away, but murdered in cold blood, her future erased, her love silenced forever, and Kyle's face drains of color so completely that Jack fears his son might collapse where he stands, because Allie wasn't just a girlfriend or a promising young woman. She was hope, she was family, she was the bridge between past and future, and hearing the word murdered attached to her name is like watching that bridge crumble into ash. Noah paces like a trapped animal as he continues, confessing that he knows who killed Allie, that he has known for some time, and that keeping this secret has been slowly destroying him from the inside out, his guilt gnawing at him every waking second, because every smile he forced, every casual conversation, every holiday gathering felt like a lie built on top of a grave. And Jack demands to know why Noah didn't come forward sooner, why he let the Abbotts search endlessly, cling to false hope, and Noah chokes out that he was afraid, terrified not just of the killer but of what the truth would do to Kyle, to Jack, to the fragile piece holding Genoa City together, because the name he's about to say will detonate everything they believe they know. Kyle can barely breathe as he begs Noah to stop, to take it back, to tell him this is some kind of sick mistake. But Noah looks him straight in the eye with tears streaming down his face and says it's no mistake, that Allie was killed deliberately, and that the person responsible is someone they trusted, someone who smiled at them, shook their hands, stood in their living rooms and pretended to care, and when Noah finally names the killer, the room plunges into a stunned, suffocating silence so profound it feels like the world itself has gone mute, Jack's knees buckling as decades of experience with betrayal failed to prepare him for this level of horror, his mind racing back through every interaction, every warning sign he dismissed, every moment where he could have stopped this if only he'd seen the truth sooner, while Kyle's shock hardens into something darker, more dangerous, as grief and rage collide violently inside him, his fists clenching as the image of Allie's smile flashes through his mind alongside the face of the person Noah has just accused, and Jack demands details, needs facts, needs proof. Because this accusation isn't just explosive, it's nuclear, capable of destroying lives and dynasties alike, and Noah provides them, piece by agonizing piece, revealing how Allie uncovered something she was never meant to see, how she confronted the wrong person at the worst possible time, and how that confrontation spiraled into a moment of irreversible violence, a moment that ended with Allie lying lifeless while her killer covered their tracks with chilling precision. Counting on fear and silence to keep the truth buried forever, Jack's world collapses as he realizes that this wasn't random, this wasn't an accident, this was calculated, and worse, it was preventable, because the killer moved in circles they all shared, exploiting trust like a weapon, and Kyle's devastation explodes into fury as he demands to know why Noah didn't go straight to the police, why he allowed the killer to remain free while Allie's family suffered, and Noah admits that he was threatened, manipulated, and pushed into silence by someone who made it clear that speaking up would cost more lives, including Kyle's, a confession that sends a fresh wave of horror through the room as Jack understands that this isn't over, that the danger may still be very real. Noah's confession doesn't just expose a murder, it exposes a web of lies that stretches far beyond Allie, touching business rivalries, old vendettas, and secrets that powerful people would kill to protect, and as Jack processes the implications, his shock gives way to a cold, iron resolve, the kind that built Jabot and survived countless wars, because whoever killed Allie didn't just take an innocent life, they declared war on the Abbott family, and Jack vows, right there in that room, that he will see justice done no matter the cost, no matter who falls, no matter how deep the rot goes. Kyle, meanwhile, is shattered in a different way, torn between wanting to hunt the killer down himself and collapsing under the unbearable weight of loss, his voice breaking as he whispers that Allie trusted them, believed in them, loved them, and that they failed her, words that cut Jack to the bone because they echo his own thoughts, his own regrets, his own unspoken guilt. As the reality of Noah's confession sinks in, the walls of the Abbott mansion seem to echo with the ghosts of the past, reminding Jack that this family has survived affairs, corporate espionage, and bitter rivalries, but this is something else entirely, a wound that won't heal easily, if ever. And when Jack asks Noah what happens next, Noah admits that coming clean was the first step, that he couldn't carry this alone anymore, that the truth had to come out even if it destroyed him, because Allie deserves that much, and Genoa City deserves to know that a killer has been walking among them, smiling, lying, and waiting. The ripple effects of Noah's confession are immediate and seismic, because once Jack and Kyle know, there is no going back, no quiet resolution, no sweeping this under the rug, and as word begins to spread through whispers and glances, Genoa City braces itself for a reckoning, alliances shifting, old enemies watching closely, and the killer realizing that the walls are finally closing in, because Noah Newman has spoken, Allie's murder has been exposed, and nothing, absolutely nothing, will ever be the same again. The fallout from Noah's confession continues to spread like a wildfire that no one in Genoa City can outrun, because once the impossible truth is spoken aloud, it refuses to stay contained, and Jack Abbott feels the full, crushing weight of leadership and loss collide as he orders the doors locked and demands absolute secrecy for the moment, knowing that if the killer realizes how much Noah has revealed, desperation could turn lethal, and Kyle paces the room like a caged storm, grief transforming into a raw, volatile fury that scares even Jack, because this isn't the impulsive anger of a broken heart, this is the cold realization that someone deliberately erased the woman Kyle planned a future with, stole years that were supposed to be theirs, and then stood close enough to watch him mourn, and Noah, still shaking, reveals more, his confession deepening as he explains how Allie had grown uneasy in her final weeks, sensing eyes on her, questioning motives, noticing financial discrepancies and whispered conversations that didn't add up, her instincts screaming danger while everyone else dismissed it as stress, and Jack's chest tightens with guilt because he remembers brushing off similar concerns, choosing optimism over vigilance, a mistake that now feels unforgivable. Kyle demands to know exactly how it happened, his voice hoarse, and Noah hesitates before painting a horrifying picture of a confrontation gone wrong, a private meeting that escalated when Allie refused to back down, refused to be silenced, her courage sealing her fate as the killer panicked, lashed out, and crossed a line that could never be uncrossed, and Jack's hands curl into fists as he listens, every detail carving itself into his memory, fueling a resolve that hardens with each word, because this wasn't just murder, it was an execution of truth, a warning meant to scare anyone else who might dig too deeply. The room grows heavier as Noah admits that the killer didn't act alone. In the aftermath, that there were cover-ups, false leads, manipulated evidence, and carefully planted distractions designed to send investigators in the wrong direction, and Kyle realizes with sickening clarity that the search efforts, the false hope, the endless waiting were all part of a cruel game, orchestrated by someone who knew exactly how to exploit their emotions, and Jack feels something inside him snap, a final thread of restraint breaking as he vows that he will dismantle every lie, every accomplice, every rotten alliance that made this possible, even if it means tearing down pillars of Genoa City itself. As they argue over the next steps, over whether to go straight to the police or quietly gather proof first, Noah reveals the final piece of his torment, that the killer made him choose between silence and bloodshed, threatening innocent lives, using fear like a leash, and Jack finally understands why Noah waited, why guilt and terror twisted him into paralysis, because this wasn't cowardice, it was psychological warfare, and Kyle's anger briefly shifts, replaced by a hollow empathy as he realizes Noah has been living inside a prison built of secrets and threats, carrying Allie's death alone while pretending to function. But empathy doesn't dull the pain, and when Kyle breaks down, collapsing into a chair as sobs rip out of him, the sound is devastating. The raw grief of a man who just lost not only the woman he loved but the future he imagined, and Jack moves to his son, pulling him into a tight embrace, whispering promises of justice he fully intends to keep, even as his own tears fall silently, because fathers aren't supposed to outlive their children's happiness, and this loss feels like a failure carved into his soul. Outside the Abbott mansion, the city continues to hum, oblivious for now, but the tension is palpable, because secrets this dark have a way of bleeding through the cracks, And already, subtle shifts are happening, suspicious glances exchanged, sudden cancellations, nervous phone calls made behind closed doors, the killer sensing, perhaps instinctively, that something has changed, that the silence they relied on is breaking, and when Jack finally decides it's time, he makes the call that sets everything in motion, alerting authorities and quietly looping in allies he trusts with his life, knowing this will ignite a chain reaction that can't be stopped. Noah's confession becomes the spark that forces old rivals to choose sides, because protecting a murderer is no longer an option, and as investigators begin to close in, inconsistencies emerge, timelines unravel, and the carefully constructed facade starts to crumble, revealing the killer's desperation as they scramble to regain control, to shift blame, to paint Noah as unstable, a tactic Jack anticipated and prepared for, ensuring that every piece of evidence Noah mentioned is documented, secured, and ready to withstand scrutiny. Kyle, fueled by grief and purpose, throws himself into the fight, determined not to let Allie's death be reduced to headlines and gossip, insisting her name be spoken, her courage honored, and her story told truthfully, and as he revisits memories of her laughter, her stubborn optimism, her belief that doing the right thing mattered, even when it was hard, he realizes that the best way to honor her is to finish what she started, to expose the truth she died trying to reveal, the killer's identity, once whispered behind closed doors, becomes an unspoken bomb ticking louder by the hour, because people begin to connect dots, to recall strange behavior, sudden mood shifts, unexplained absences, and as fear spreads, so does accountability, with former allies distancing themselves, denials growing frantic, and the killer realizing too late that the walls are closing in from every direction. Jack watches it all unfold with a grim satisfaction tempered by sorrow, because justice won't bring Allie back, won't erase Kyle's pain or Noah's trauma, but it will send a message that Genoa City does not protect monsters, no matter how powerful or charming they appear, and when the arrest finally comes, when the truth is laid bare in a way that can no longer be denied, the city reels, stunned by how close evil had been hiding, and Jack feels both vindicated and hollow, knowing this victory was bought with an innocent life. In the aftermath, as memorials are planned and tears are shed openly, Kyle stands before Allie's photo, whispering promises of love that will never fade, while Noah, finally unburdened, vows to spend the rest of his life making amends, and Jack, staring out at the city he helped shape, understands that this chapter will haunt them forever, because Allie's murder changed everything, stripped away illusions, and reminded them all that truth, no matter how painful, must always come out, even when it shatters worlds, because silence is what killers depend on, and in Genoa City, that silence is finally, irrevocably broken. The days that follow feel unreal, like Genoa City has slipped into an alternate version of itself where familiar streets carry an undercurrent of dread and every conversation feels loaded with meaning, because Allie's murder is no longer a private nightmare confined to the Abbott mansion but a looming shadow stretching across every corner of the city, and Jack Abbott moves through it with the grim focus of a man who has buried his grief beneath duty, his voice calm and controlled in public, while his nights are haunted by memories of what he failed to see, what he failed to stop, and Kyle, barely sleeping, barely eating, becomes a walking embodiment of heartbreak and fury, his eyes hollow yet burning as he attends meetings he doesn't remember agreeing to, nods through condolences that feel empty, and clenches his jaw every time someone says Allie's name like it's just another tragic headline instead of the woman who was supposed to be his wife, his future, his family. Noah, meanwhile, becomes both witness and lightning rod, his confession placing him at the center of a storm he never wanted, reporters sniffing around, whispers following him through the GCAC, and strangers judging the timing of his truth without understanding the terror that silenced him, and though guilt still gnaws at him, there is also a fragile sense of relief, because for the first time since Allie died, he is no longer alone with it, no longer carrying her death like a secret sentence carved into his chest. As the investigation accelerates, the killer's desperation becomes visible, subtle at first, missed calls, erratic behavior, sudden changes in routine, then increasingly reckless, because monsters who rely on control do not handle exposure well, and Jack watches carefully, noting every crack in the facade, every overreaction, every lie that comes too quickly, his instincts sharpened by decades of surviving corporate wars and personal betrayals, and when he sits with Kyle late one night in the Abbott living room, the silence between them heavy but no longer empty, Jack finally admits the truth he's been avoiding, that he blames himself, that he trusted the wrong people, that he let business and optimism blind him to danger, and Kyle, voice breaking, tells his father that blame won't bring Allie back, but stopping the person who took her might stop this from happening again. Words that steady Jack even as they cut deep. The city begins to fracture under the weight of suspicion, because the killer's identity, though not officially announced, is becoming an open secret among those closest to the truth, and alliances quietly shift as people choose whether to distance themselves or double down on denial, and Jack sees clearly now who values justice and who values self-preservation, a distinction he will never forget, and when he attends Allie's memorial service, standing beside Kyle as candles flicker and familiar faces gather with tear-streaked expressions. The finality of it hits him with brutal force, because this is it, this is the moment hope officially dies, replaced by memory, and as Kyle delivers a trembling eulogy about Allie's kindness, her intelligence, her refusal to look away from uncomfortable truths, there isn't a dry eye in the room, and even those who once dismissed her feel the weight of her absence like a personal indictment. Noah sits near the back, head bowed, listening to Kyle speak about the courage it takes to do the right thing even when it's dangerous, and the words feel directed at him, a strange mix of forgiveness and responsibility woven into every sentence, and for the first time since his confession, Noah feels something close to grace, not absolution, but the possibility of redemption through action, through ensuring Allie's voice isn't lost beneath legal jargon and political maneuvering. Behind the scenes, the case grows darker as evidence surfaces that suggests the killer's reach extended farther than anyone feared, implicating financial crimes, blackmail, and manipulation that had nothing to do with Allie at first, until she noticed patterns others ignored, and Jack realizes with chilling clarity that Allie wasn't targeted randomly, she was eliminated because she was perceptive, because she refused to stay silent, because she believed truth mattered more than comfort. And that realization hardens his resolve into something unyielding, because allowing her killer to escape justice would be the ultimate betrayal of everything she stood for. Kyle channels his pain into purpose, working closely with investigators, revisiting old messages, emails, and memories with excruciating detail, reliving moments that now feel like warnings he missed, and though the process rips open wounds daily, it also gives him something to hold on to, a reason to get out of bed, a mission that feels worthy of the love he lost. And Jack watches his son transform, grief carving him into someone sharper, more intense, but also more honest, stripped of illusions about people and power. As pressure mounts, the killer begins to unravel publicly, snapping at allies, making careless mistakes, their carefully curated image cracking under scrutiny, and when they finally realize that Jack, Kyle, and Noah aren't backing down, that there will be no quiet settlement, no strategic silence, panic sets in, because exposure means everything they built will collapse, and in a last-ditch effort to regain control, the killer attempts to manipulate the narrative, leaking false information, painting themselves as a victim of conspiracy, but the lies no longer land the way they once did, because Allie's death changed the rules, and people are listening differently now, questioning motives, demanding proof. The arrest, when it comes, is both explosive and anticlimactic, flashing lights and murmurs outside a familiar building, shock rippling through those who never believed this person capable of such violence, and Jack stands at a distance, watching officers lead the killer away, his expression unreadable, because while justice is finally moving, it feels hollow compared to the life that was stolen, and Kyle, witnessing the moment, feels a strange emptiness alongside a surge of vindication, because seeing the killer in handcuffs doesn't bring relief the way he imagined, it simply confirms the permanence of Allie's absence. The trial that follows becomes a spectacle, secrets spilling into the open, reputations destroyed, and Genoa City forced to confront how easily charm and power can mask cruelty, and Noah takes the stand, his voice steady despite the weight of countless eyes on him, recounting his confession, the threats, the fear, and the silence that nearly broke him, and as he speaks, he feels Allie with him, not as a ghost of guilt but as a presence urging him forward, and when Kyle testifies, his grief laid bare for all to see, the courtroom falls silent, because love like that doesn't need embellishment, it speaks for itself. Jack listens to every word, every revelation, his jaw tight, his heart aching, but when the verdict is finally read and justice is formally declared, a collective exhale ripples through the room, not relief exactly, but acknowledgement, a recognition that the truth mattered, that Allie's life wasn't erased quietly, that her death forced accountability. In the aftermath, Genoa City is changed, more cautious, more cynical perhaps, but also more awake, and Jack returns to his office knowing that his leadership will never be the same, that trust must be earned anew, while Kyle begins the slow, painful process of rebuilding a life he never wanted without Allie, carrying her memory like both a wound and a compass, and Noah, though still haunted, walks forward determined to live a life defined not by the silence that once trapped him but by the truth that finally set everything in motion. Allie Nguyen's murder becomes a defining chapter in Genoa City's history, a reminder that courage can be dangerous but silence is deadly, and though nothing will ever undo what was lost, her legacy lives on in the justice she inspired, the people she changed, and the promise, quietly shared among those who loved her, that her name will never be forgotten. Because sometimes the impossible truth doesn't just shatter worlds, it forces them to become something better in the aftermath.